Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a corporate rise and fall that's honestly unlike anything else we've seen. We're looking at a company that attempted the impossible, literally trying to transform everyday, basic physical office space into a sprawling global technology empire. It's a massive story about ambition, blindingly rapid growth, and ultimately, one of the most jaw-dropping business failures in modern history.
Part 1. The $47 billion illusion.
Now, to really grasp the sheer magnitude of this collapse, we have to look at the dizzying heights this company reached before gravity finally took over. Flashback to 2019. The financial world was, well, completely mesmerized. Investors truly believed they were looking at the absolute next tech giant, right up there with the biggest names in Silicon Valley. Fueled by billions, and I mean billions in private capital from mega investors, they rewarded WeWork with a staggering, almost incomprehensible valuation of nearly $47 billion. At this exact moment, WeWork was the undeniable startup sensation. They had literally captured the imagination of the entire business world.
But then, the whole illusion just shattered. In what would quickly become one of the most dramatic corporate collapses we've ever seen, everything changed. That massive $47 billion valuation didn't just dip a little bit. It completely vanished. Gone. The entire empire just crumbled overnight. So you have to ask yourself, how exactly does a company worth tens of billions of dollars lose everything?
Let's get into it in Part 2, Selling the Future Workplace.
Okay, to really understand this incredible fall from grace, we first have to understand the billion-dollar dream they originally sold to the world. Because WeWork didn't pitch themselves as your standard commercial landlord, right? They didn't just want to rent you a desk and give you some free coffee. No, they promised an absolute revolution. Their vision was this incredibly ambitious goal to completely transform traditional office spaces into a highly integrated global technology brand. They were out there selling the actual future of work, and they successfully convinced the market that they were a deeply innovative tech startup, definitely not just a property management firm.
And this right here is the core conflict sitting at the absolute heart of their business strategy. It's stark, right? On one side, you have this tech vision, a scalable global empire promising explosive, exponential growth and those massive software-like profit margins. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have the grounding reality. They are running a highly traditional, wildly capital-intensive, physical real estate business strapped with heavy long-term liabilities. Basically, they continuously pitch that limitless tech vision just to mask the very real, super restrictive, physical constraints of their actual day-to-day operations.
Which leads us to Part 3. The price of hypergrowth.
You see, this brilliant tech illusion directly fueled an era of just unchecked, explosive global expansion. Believing their own hype, the company accelerated at a dizzying pace. If you trace it from the humble birth of a startup attempting to change offices forever, through this massive global expansion phase, all the way up to that 2019 peak valuation, it's wild. They were opening locations globally at a rate that completely defied traditional business logic. All of it was driven by this immense, crushing pressure to justify that massive startup valuation we talked about. But here's the catch. While the empire grew at breakneck speed on the outside, something incredibly dangerous was brewing on the inside. Running right parallel to that rapid expansion was an equally massive yet deeply hidden financial pressure. The fundamental flaw here? It was a massive duration mismatch. Think about it. They were taking on these locked-in, long-term lease liabilities with commercial landlords, but they were relying entirely on unpredictable, short-term, month-to-month rental income from their tenants. The math is scary. The more they expanded, the more money they burned, creating this fundamentally unsustainable financial dynamic just lurking in the shadows.
So this brings us to a major investigative pivot for this explainer. I mean, how on earth could such deep structural weaknesses remain totally hidden from some of the absolute smartest investors in the world? And perhaps even more importantly, who was ultimately steering this ship into such incredibly dangerous waters?
Let's look at Part 4. Fatal leadership decisions.
Listen, the financial pressure was undeniably immense, for sure. But bad numbers alone don't just magically sink a $47 billion ship. No, it was ultimately a severe lack of corporate governance and incredibly erratic leadership decisions that exposed the fatal weaknesses behind the entire empire. The choices being made by those at the very top, basically prioritizing this relentless growth at all costs expansion over actual operational stability and basic financial discipline, that's what fundamentally doomed the company. Because when a business model is already straining under its own weight, unchecked executive power and chaotic management, well, they act as the final catalyst for total disaster. Which brings us to Part 5, the empire collapses. So all of these hidden business problems, combined with those fatal leadership flaws, perfectly set the stage for a catastrophic collision with reality. And the sequence of failure was undeniable and honestly incredibly swift. Step 1 was that unchecked, reckless expansion we saw, which fed directly into Step 2, unbearable, crushing financial pressure behind the scenes. And then, finally, Step 3, a completely failed initial public offering. Literally the exact moment they filed their prospectus and opened up their books to Wall Street, the illusion shattered. The public market took one look and realized the math simply didn't work. Their explosive growth finally met harsh financial realities, leading directly to the total spectacular collapse of the $47 billion empire.
Finally, Part 6, Lessons from the Fall. When we actually step back and synthesize this massive failure, the corporate strategy lessons are pretty stark. First off, the illusion of a tech valuation can be a highly dangerous mirage if your underlying product is, well, entirely physical. Second, prioritizing rapid expansion over real financial stability, that will always catch up to you in the end. Third, ignoring fundamental business model problems carries a fatal cost. And finally, the profound impact of leadership decisions and solid corporate governance literally cannot be overstated. All of these points prove, beyond a doubt, that even the most powerful brand and the most incredible vision simply cannot survive fundamental business model flaws and hard financial reality.
We've seen exactly why this $47 billion giant fell. We've tracked the crazy expansion, the massive duration mismatch, and the leadership failures. But this leaves us with a lingering, super provocative question as we look at the market today. WeWork built a global empire on a tech illusion and lost everything. But is the modern startup world still buying into similar illusions right now? Honestly, what are investors really valuing today? Is it solid business models or just the next great story? Definitely keep that in mind the next time you see a startup promising to completely change the world.